I never thought my life would change over a simple notification. It was just another evening, another quiet night where everything seemed perfectly normal until it wasn't. I was sitting on the couch, half watching TV, half scrolling through my phone when a familiar name popped up on my screen. Eric. My wife's boss. Had a great time today. Can't wait to see you again. Winking face. The message hovered on the lock screen of Lisa's phone, which was lying face up on the coffee table. My stomach clenched instantly, a cold wave running through my entire body. I wasn't the kind of guy to snoop. I trusted Lisa. We had been married for 10 years, and though things weren't as exciting as they used to be, I never once doubted her loyalty. But this wasn't right. Lisa was in the shower, the sound of water running muffling any movements I made. I stared at the phone, debating. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. But then the screen lit up again. Another message. Your husband doesn't suspect anything, right? Smirking face. My pulse pounded in my ears. The words felt like a slap across my face. This was no joke. This was no misunderstanding. This was betrayal. My first instinct was to storm into the bathroom, demand an explanation, throw the phone in her face, and watch her scramble for an excuse. But I didn't. I forced myself to breathe, to stay calm. Acting on impulse wouldn't give me answers. If Lisa was cheating, I needed proof. I needed the truth. I picked up the phone. My hand was shaking as I swiped it open. No passcode. That at least was surprising. Either she was careless, or she thought I was too trusting to ever check. Either way, I was about to learn everything. My eyes scanned the conversation, scrolling up past winking emojis and heart reactions. Weeks of messages. Conversations about meetings that had nothing to do with work. Talks about hotel rooms. Even a joke about how Eric had been better than expected. I swallowed the bile, rising in my throat. The water in the shower shut off. My time was up. I quickly placed the phone back where it was, my heart hammering so hard I thought she'd hear it. I barely had time to sit back before Lisa walked out of the bathroom, a towel wrapped around her body, humming like nothing had changed. She smiled at me. What are you watching? I looked at her, really looked at her, at the woman I thought I knew, at the woman who had been lying to me. I forced a smile. Just some crime show. You'd hate it. She chuckled, running the towel through her damp hair before leaning down and kissing my cheek. I'm exhausted. Long day. I bet. I nodded and watched her disappear into the bedroom. My fingers curled into a fist as I stared at the coffee table, at the phone that had just shattered my entire world. This wasn't over. Not even close. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Lisa moving around the room, getting ready for work. I kept my eyes closed, trying to control the rush of anger that surged through me. I could hear the zipper on her purse, the quiet rustling of clothes as she adjusted her outfit, and finally, the soft sound of her applying makeup at the dresser. It was a routine I had seen for years, but now it felt foreign, like I was watching a stranger in my home. I wanted to turn over, grab her wrist, and demand to know how long she had been lying to me. But instead, I forced myself to breathe steadily, pretending to still be asleep. I needed more than just a few texts before I confronted her. I needed to know everything. Lisa finished getting ready and sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through her phone. My heart pounded as I waited, wondering if she would message him right in front of me. I was hoping for some kind of obvious slip-up, something to confirm that last night hadn't been a misunderstanding, but after a few minutes, she set the phone down and ran her fingers through my hair. I'll be home late tonight, she murmured. Work dinner with the team. I had to force my body to stay relaxed under her touch, had to keep my voice neutral. Oh yeah? Where at? That Italian place downtown, the one with the terrible parking. She laughed softly. Don't wait up, okay? I almost let it slip, almost asked her if Eric would be there, if they had a hotel room booked afterward, if she had already picked out her lingerie for him, but I clenched my jaw and nodded. Got it. She kissed the side of my face, grabbed her things, and left. The moment I heard the front door shut, I sat up, exhaling a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My hands were clenched into fists, nails digging into my palms. Every part of me wanted to smash something, to let out the rage simmering under my skin, but I forced myself to focus. I had a whole day to figure out my next move. I spent the next few hours going through everything. our shared laptop, our home Wi-Fi records, anything that might give me a deeper look into how far this had gone. I wasn't great with tech, but I knew enough to check her browsing history, her deleted files, her email logs. The more I dug, the worse it got. There were restaurant reservations under her name at places I had never been, receipts for hotel stays that lined up perfectly with nights she had claimed to be working late. Then the email. It was buried deep in her archived messages, as if she had forgotten to delete it. Sent 2 weeks ago. The subject line was nothing special, just next time, but the body of the email made my stomach churn. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about it. Let's get away for a weekend, just us. No sneaking around. No rushing. You pick the place, I'll take care of the rest. There was no response from Eric, but I didn't need one. The meaning was clear. Lisa wasn't just screwing around. She was planning for more. She was thinking about a future with him, without me. I closed the laptop slowly, staring at the screen, my pulse hammering in my ears. My wife was already halfway out the door, and I had been too blind to see it. The realization didn't hit me all at once, but in slow, sharp waves. This wasn't a one-time thing, wasn't some impulsive mistake she had regretted. This was something ongoing, something she had chosen over and over again. And now, I had to decide what I was going to do about it. I spent the afternoon preparing. First, I called my lawyer, setting up an appointment for the following week. I needed to understand exactly what my options were before I made any moves. Then I went to the bank, making sure my accounts were secure. I didn't want Lisa suddenly draining our savings when she realized what was coming. Lastly, I stopped by a small electronics store and picked up a voice recorder. If she was going to keep lying to me, I wanted proof. By the time evening rolled around, I was ready. I sat in the living room, waiting. Lisa texted me around 7, saying the dinner had just started and that she'd be home late. I didn't respond. At 10, another message. Heading home soon. At 11, the front door opened, and she stepped inside, heels clicking against the floor. I watched her walk in, eyes scanning her appearance. Her makeup was still perfect, her perfume still strong, but there was something in the way she avoided my gaze that told me everything I needed to know. "Long dinner," I said. She hesitated, then nodded, setting her purse down. Yeah, the team had a lot to discuss. I stood up, stretching like I hadn't been sitting there for hours waiting for her. "I'm going to bed." She looked surprised, like she had expected me to ask questions, maybe even accuse her. But I wasn't going to give her that. Not yet. I walked past her, and just before I reached the hallway, I paused. "By the way, did Eric come?" I saw it then. The smallest flicker of hesitation, the briefest pause before she forced a smile. "Yeah, of course. He's the boss." I nodded slowly, pretending to believe her. "Makes sense." Then I went to bed, leaving her standing there. I could feel her staring after me, probably wondering why I wasn't pushing, why I wasn't digging. But I didn't need to push. I already had everything I needed. The next morning, I woke up before Lisa, lying still in bed, staring at the ceiling. I had barely slept, my mind running through every possibility, every scenario of how this would play out. The part of me that still loved her wanted to believe there was an explanation, that I was jumping to conclusions, but the evidence was overwhelming. I needed to see how far she was willing to go, how many more lies she could stack on top of the ones she had already told. I needed to hear it from her own mouth, not just through messages and emails. Lisa stirred beside me, stretching before reaching for her phone. I turned my head slightly, watching as she scrolled through her notifications, her face unreadable. Then, after a few moments, she glanced over at me and smiled like everything was normal, like the past 24 hours hadn't changed anything. "Morning," she said softly, leaning in to kiss my cheek. I forced myself to stay calm, to not flinch away. "Morning." She got up, wrapped her robe around herself, and headed for the bathroom, leaving her phone on the nightstand. The temptation to grab it was strong, but I didn't need to anymore. I already had enough. Instead, I got up, went to the kitchen, and made coffee, forcing my hands to remain steady as I poured into my mug. The weight of what I was about to do sat heavy in my chest, but there was no turning back now. By the time Lisa came downstairs, fully dressed for work, I was already sitting at the table, pretending to scroll through my phone. She moved around the kitchen like she always did, making herself a smoothie, checking the time, barely looking in my direction. It was like she had already detached from this life, from me. She was just going through the motions, waiting for the moment she could leave. "I might be late again tonight," she said casually, her back to me as she rinsed out the blender. I took a slow sip of my coffee before responding. "Another work dinner?" She hesitated for just a second before nodding. "Yeah, you know how it is, meetings, networking, all that." I set my mug down carefully, staring at her, letting the silence stretch long enough to make her shift uncomfortably. "Eric going?" This time, the pause was longer. "Probably. He usually does." I nodded, picking up my phone and scrolling through nothing. "Makes sense." She grabbed her keys, slung her bag over her shoulder, and finally turned to face me. "You okay? You seem off." I looked up at her, forcing the most neutral expression I could manage. "I'm fine, just tired." She studied me for a moment, like she was trying to decide if she believed me. Then she nodded slowly and walked toward the door. "I'll text you later," she said before stepping out. The second the door closed, I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair. My heart was pounding, my nerves on edge, but I had done what I needed to. I let her walk into her own lie, let her confirm everything without even realizing it. Tonight, I would have my final proof. I spent the day preparing. I left work early, telling my boss I had a personal matter to deal with, and then I drove straight to the hotel where Lisa had booked a room with Eric the last time. I wasn't sure she would go back there again, but I had a feeling. When people get comfortable with their lies, they start repeating patterns. I sat in my car across from the entrance, watching. Hours passed. I barely moved, barely blinked, waiting for that moment, that confirmation. Then, just after 7, I saw her car pull in. My grip on the steering wheel tightened as I watched her park, step out, check her phone, and walk inside without hesitation. There was no work dinner, no networking event, just another night of betrayal. I waited 10 minutes before following. Inside, I approached the front desk, keeping my voice calm and friendly. "Hey, my wife left her phone in the car, but I don't know her room number. Could you help me out?" The clerk hesitated, glancing at the screen. "What's her name?" I gave it, and a moment later, he nodded. "She's in 214. I thanked him, turned away, and made my way toward the elevator. Every step felt heavier than the last, my pulse hammering in my ears. I had told myself I wouldn't do anything stupid, that I would just confirm and walk away, but the anger was building, threatening to spill over. I stopped outside room 214, staring at the door, my fists clenched at my sides. I could hear faint voices inside, laughter, movement. That was all I needed. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and snapped a picture of the door, the room number, the proof that couldn't be denied. Then I turned and walked away, my hands shaking as I dialed the one person I never thought I would call about this, Eric's wife. I had debated it for hours, going back and forth on whether it was the right move, but in the end, it wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure the lies stopped, about making sure Lisa and Eric faced the consequences of what they had done. I found her number easily enough, listed under Eric's emergency contact from an old work directory I had access to. The phone rang twice before she picked up. "Hello." I hesitated for just a second before speaking. "Hi, you don't know me, but I think we need to talk." There was silence, then a cautious, "Who is this?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "My name is Daniel. My wife is Lisa." Another pause, longer this time, before she exhaled sharply. "I'm guessing this isn't a social call." "No," I said, my voice calm but firm. "It's about Eric and Lisa and the hotel room they're in right now." The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, before she finally spoke again, her voice colder this time. "Where?" I gave her the address. I didn't know what she would do with the information, but I knew one thing. This was the beginning of the end. I waited in the parking lot, gripping my phone, my eyes locked on the entrance of the hotel. My heart was still racing from the call, from the way Eric's wife had gone completely silent for several seconds before responding. She hadn't even asked for proof, hadn't questioned me. Maybe she had already suspected it. Maybe she had seen the same signs I had, or maybe she just wasn't surprised that her husband was capable of this. Either way, she had taken down the address, repeated it back to me, and then simply said, "I'll be there soon." I hadn't known what to expect from her, whether she would cry, scream, or try to deny it. But the way she had spoken, so flat and emotionless, made me think that whatever happened next wasn't going to be quiet. 15 minutes later, headlights cut through the dim parking lot, and I watched as a silver SUV pulled in, slowing down as it approached the entrance. I already knew it was her before she even stepped out. She didn't hesitate, didn't check her phone for confirmation or second-guess her arrival. She just parked, turned off the engine, and got out, moving quickly toward the hotel doors with a sharp focus that told me she had already made up her mind about what she was going to do. I opened my car door, stepping out just as she reached the entrance. "Hey!" She turned her head slightly, barely looking at me as she pushed open the door. "Room number?" I followed her inside, keeping my voice steady. 214. She didn't respond, didn't slow down, just walked straight through the lobby, her boots clicking against the floor as she headed toward the elevators. I wasn't sure if she wanted me to come with her, but I did anyway. I needed to see this through, needed to be there when it all came crashing down. We stepped into the elevator in silence, and as the door slid shut, I glanced over at her, taking in the way she clenched her jaw, the way her hands were balled into fists at her sides. "Are you sure about this?" I asked finally. She exhaled sharply, staring at the elevator doors. "I don't know what I'm sure about, but I know I'm not going to let them get away with this." I nodded, watching as the numbers above the doors ticked up. When we reached the second floor, she stepped out first, her pace steady, unwavering. I kept up beside her, the hallway stretching out ahead of us, empty except for the faint hum of a vending machine at the end of the corridor. Then, finally, we stopped in front of room 214. For a moment, there was silence. Neither of us moved. Then she raised a hand and knocked hard. There was a brief pause, then movement from inside. A muffled voice, too distant to make out. Then footsteps. The door handle turned. And then, just like that, Eric was standing in front of us, his expression shifting from casual surprise to full-blown panic in a matter of seconds. His wife didn't even give him time to react. She shoved the door open the rest of the way and stepped inside, her voice sharp and cutting. "Where is she?" Eric stammered, his eyes darting between us. What are you?" "Don't play dumb," she snapped, stepping further into the room. "Where the hell is she?" I stepped in behind her, my gaze sweeping across the room. It was exactly what I expected. Unmade bed, half-empty wine bottle on the nightstand, Lisa's purse sitting on the chair in the corner. And then, from the bathroom, the door creaked open, and there she was. Lisa. Her hair was damp, her expression frozen in shock as she took in the scene. She was wearing the hotel robe, her clothes nowhere in sight. And the second her eyes met mine, I saw it. The realization, the panic, the sudden understanding that she had finally been caught in a way she couldn't talk her way out of. "Daniel, don't." I cut her off, my voice steady. "Don't say my name like that." Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Eric, then at his wife, then back at me, as if trying to figure out who she should be more afraid of. Eric's wife turned to her husband, her voice shaking now, but not with sadness, with fury. "How long?" Eric ran a hand through his hair, looking anywhere but at her. "It's not what you think." "Bullshit," she shot back. "How long?" Lisa finally found her voice, stepping forward slightly. "Please, let's not do this here." Eric's wife turned on her so fast that Lisa actually took a step back. "Oh, we're doing this here," she said coldly. "You slept with my husband. You think you get to decide how this goes?" Lisa's hands trembled as she reached for the belt of her robe, tightening it as if that would somehow make this less humiliating. "It was a mistake." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "A mistake." I gestured around the room. "You've been meeting him here for weeks, maybe longer." "That's not a mistake, Lisa. That's a choice." Her face crumpled for just a second before she smoothed it out again, trying to regain some control. "Daniel, please, can we talk?" "No," I said firmly, my voice finally rising. "We're not talking. We're done." The words seemed to hit her like a slap. Her eyes widened, her breath hitching slightly. "You don't mean that." Eric's wife turned back to her husband. "Pack your shit. "You're not coming home." Eric blinked, finally looking at her, his mouth opening to protest, but she cut him off with a single sharp glare. Lisa stepped toward me, reaching for my arm. "Daniel, please just—" I stepped back. "Don't touch me." She flinched, her hand dropping back to her side. I can fix this." I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. "No, Lisa, you can't." For a moment, there was only silence. Then, without another word, I turned and walked out. I didn't need to see anything else. The truth was right there, in that room, in the desperation in Lisa's voice, in the way Eric looked like he wanted to disappear. I had everything I needed. Now, it was time to leave it all behind. I walked straight to my car without looking back. My hands were steady as I reached for the door handle, but when I sat down, I just gripped the wheel for a moment, staring ahead at nothing. The past few days had unraveled everything I thought my life was. The truth was laid out, undeniable, irreversible, and yet, as much as I had prepared for this, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to feel. The anger was there, but it had burned so hot for so long that now it felt distant, like an ember that had lost its flame. What was left wasn't sadness or heartbreak. It was something quieter, something final. A knock on the passenger side window snapped me out of it. I turned and saw Eric's wife standing there, arms crossed, her face unreadable. I reached over and unlocked the door, and she climbed in, letting out a sharp breath as she leaned back against the seat. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. "You all right?" I finally asked, my voice sounding strange in the quiet. She let out a humorless laugh. "Am I all right?" "No, not even close. But at least I'm not sitting at home like an idiot while my husband screws my life away in a cheap hotel." She turned her head to look at me. "What about you?" I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. "I don't even know anymore. I thought I'd feel something bigger, you know? I thought I'd explode, that I want to destroy everything, but now that it's all out in the open, I just feel done." She nodded slowly, like she understood. "Yeah, I get that." We sat there in silence again, both of us staring at the windshield, both of us knowing that when we left this parking lot, everything would be different. There was no fixing this, no way to go back to how things were before. The only thing left was to decide what came next. "So what now?" she asked. I ran a hand through my hair, finally starting the car. "Divorce. A good lawyer. And after that, I don't know." She sighed. "Same here." Then she hesitated before glancing at me again. "Thanks, by the way, for calling me. Most guys wouldn't have." I tightened my grip on the wheel. "I didn't do it for revenge. I just figured you deserved to know." She gave a small nod, then reached for the door handle. "Good luck, Daniel." "You too." She got out and walked back to her car, and I watched as she sat there for a while before finally pulling away. When she was gone, I turned my focus back to the road, shifted into drive, and left the hotel behind for good. By the time I got home, the house felt different. Lisa wasn't there yet, but I knew she would be soon. The thought of her walking through that door like nothing had happened, like we still had a life together, made my stomach turn. I wasn't going to sit around and listen to her beg, to hear her say all the things she should have said before she ever betrayed me. I had no interest in hearing her excuses. I had wasted enough time already. I went straight to the bedroom, grabbed a suitcase from the closet, and started packing. I didn't need much, just enough to get me through the next few weeks until I figured out where I wanted to be. The house, the furniture, all of it suddenly felt like a museum of a life that didn't belong to me anymore. I wasn't going to stay here, wasn't going to wake up every morning surrounded by the echoes of what Lisa had destroyed. I was zipping up my bag when I heard the front door open. For a brief second, I froze, gripping the handle of the suitcase tightly. Then I forced myself to relax, exhaling slowly as I turned toward the bedroom door. "Daniel?" Lisa's voice carried through the house, hesitant, nervous. She must have known by now that I had left the hotel before her, that I had gone home first. Maybe she had hoped I would still be there, waiting, willing to talk. I stepped out into the hallway, just as she appeared at the other end. She looked like she had been crying, her makeup slightly smudged, her clothes wrinkled like she had changed in a hurry. She saw the suitcase in my hand, and her face crumpled. "Daniel, please," she started, taking a step closer. I didn't move. "I'm leaving." Her breath hitched. Just like that. I stared at her, The woman I had once loved, the woman who had stood beside me for years, who had promised to be faithful, to be my partner. Now all I saw was a stranger. No, Lisa, not just like that. This started the moment you decided to cheat on me. She shook her head rapidly, her voice rising. I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking straight. You were thinking just fine. I cut in sharply. You thought about it when you sent those messages, when you booked those hotels, when you lied to my face over and over again. You didn't just make a mistake, Lisa. You made a choice. She wiped at her face, taking another step toward me. I'll do anything to fix this. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. You can't fix this. Daniel, I already spoke to a lawyer. That stopped her in her tracks. She blinked at me, her mouth slightly open, her entire body stiffening. What? I called this morning. I have an appointment in a few days. I held up my phone, and I have everything I need. The texts, the emails, the hotel confirmations. It's all documented, Lisa. Her shoulders slumped, and for the first time, I saw the moment it truly hit her. The realization that she had finally destroyed everything, that there was no talking her way out of it. I don't want a divorce, she whispered. I exhaled slowly. That's too bad. Because I do. I walked past her without another word, grabbed my car keys, and headed for the door. She didn't try to stop me this time. She just stood there, frozen, watching as I left. The air outside felt different as I stepped onto the porch. Lighter, maybe quieter. I didn't know where I was going to go yet, but for the first time in a long time, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't looking back.